life. Since the incident, Mr. Carrick has become a public protester campaigning for the banning of boxing and maintains that he regrets the very moment he first picked up the gloves. Okay, so that's an example of an anecdote. It's not about the writer, it's not first person I, but it's about Michael Watson. You can call it a case study. Someone else who's had an experience which clearly really backs you up in terms of banning boxing, because he's clearly suffered. Notice that we have, an actual name used, Michael Watson. We don't say where he's from, but we give the details of exactly what happened to him, and what kind of level he was working at. So try and give some details, and we've even got a quotation there, okay, that actually backs up the argument. Next thing to consider, statistics. We talked about sources of authority, so it needs to be someone respected, or an organisation that's respected. A survey carried out by the Australian Medical Council found that last year there were 294 cases of fractures or severe muscular damage, 598 cases of serious head injury, and 4 fatalities linked to boxing. In their conclusion, the AMC said that 35% of pro boxers suffered some form of long-term health issue as a consequence, and that for amateur boxers the figure was actually 20% higher. Okay, so we've got percentages, we've got facts and figures here used. The Australian Medical Council, obviously a recognised body, they carry some clout, okay, they are authoritative, they have status, and that backs up, again, the argument that boxing should be outlawed. Final one, expert opinions. Okay, so quotations from respected individuals. Medical studies also show that boxing can lead to long-term brain damage and to illnesses such as Parkinson's disease. Professor A. Smith of Victoria University stated last week that there was a significant risk of serious injury to the brain and degenerative conditions such as Parkinson's. Okay, so we've got a clear quotation there in our quotation marks. We referred to them formally, we said who they represent, Victoria University, and that clearly backs it up as well, so further evidence that you could consider. Now, when it comes to counter-argument, towards the end of your letter to the editor, we've used this sentence start of this sentence frame. Some might say, blah blah blah, but blah blah blah, or some might argue one point of view, but here's the answer. Okay, so some might argue that if boxing were banned, it would simply be forced underground, but there is no reason to think this. Cockfighting and dogfighting were banned and they are almost unheard of. If caught, those breaking the law by organising or watching a boxing match could be punished severely. This will scare off others from trying to stage fights in the future. Without television coverage, there will be no money left in boxing. It is not as if boxers have nothing else to do. With their athletic talents, they could make it in other sports instead. Okay, so this clearly starts off using that example of other type of fights that were banned, and now they're not heard of. The law is clearly wiping off the face of the earth virtually. Okay, so the law is effective. So they won't be driven, down alleyways and into warehouses, these boxers. Boxing will just disappear, and they can, it develops the argument. Their skills can be used elsewhere. Their athleticism, that's still, a desired characteristic. We're not kind of beating up on boxers, if you excuse the pun. They still recognise as sports people, but they can take the talents elsewhere. Okay, now, when you're asked to write in response to the article that you've read, you must understand what the argument is, first of all, and then you're asked to respond to it in your letter to the editor. Okay, so if it's an article about banning boxing, okay, clearly you've got to say whether you agree or disagree in your argument to the editor. Okay, state your view clearly. What this really emphasises is that you need to plan, whether it's a spider diagram there, putting down all your ideas before you start writing, okay, and then numbering them to kind of give you an idea of the structure of how you're going to work through your letter, what you're going to do first, what you're going to do second. And then you might have lines, little spider legs coming off that with what kind of evidence you might use, maybe a statistic or an anecdote or an expert's opinion. Remember, you're using your own words here. The stimulus material is the article. Don't directly repeat their argument, even if you're kind of backing up the writer, even if you agree with what they've said in the article. Don't directly repeat the same, language, the same words that they've used. So, another idea is to use just a simple table. Some of you prefer that to spider diagrams, which can look a bit messy, and we can number it just the same. Okay. Final thing, come back to this analogy of building a house, that's your argument in your letter to the editor. The bricks, remember, are your reasons. Persuasion is your paint job. That's what makes it sound good. Alright, so it can actually swing your reader. So we use this acronym here, REAPER. You can write it down as soon as you get in the exam, just to remind yourself to come back to. These are some of the more common, more straightforward persuasive techniques: repetition, exaggeration, alliteration, personal pronouns, emotive language, rhetorical questions. Okay, I'm going to show you just maybe the first few minutes of Barack Obama's inauguration speech. Obviously, he's a recognized orator. He's very powerful in the way he speaks. And just look for examples, even if you can't attach a label to it, like some of those named in Reaper, just something that he says that is convincing. Okay, some persuasive technique that he uses. Could be those, it could be others, it could just be something that you think is effective. So make a note of what he says as he speaks. Alright? Okay, so obviously he's famous as the President of America at the moment. And it's not only the kind of persuasive techniques that he uses, it's also his delivery. Okay, dramatic pauses, the kind of stress that he uses. He's got some really good speaking listening skills, as Barack. Okay, so hopefully you recognised a few persuasive devices that he used there that you could actually use yourself in your persuasive letter. That clip, if you just go onto YouTube, Google Barack Obama inauguration speech, you'll find it straight away. Now, other strong examples of persuasive devices, obviously in advertising. All right. So this one is for two products, hair care products. Have a look here. See if you can spot any persuasive devices being used. Embrace your softer side with perfectly imperfect hair. Layer our products together with soft tussles that beg to be touched, not that they need to beg. And hey, since we work well together to create one luscious look, it's almost mistake-proof. Okay. So you have certain kind of emotive or exaggerated language here, which is to engage your reader. You've got examples of alliteration there with softer side, the repetition of the S, which is actually called sibilance. You repeat the S sound. Perfectly imperfect hair. You could argue kind of repetition for effect there within just a short phrase. And this idea of personalizing the product like it's actually personifying the product like it's actually a person, okay, or the hair is a person, not that they need to beg, okay, so the hair is clearly having a great time, okay. And this conversational tone this article takes, you really need to stay a bit more formal than this, but when it says hey, that's clearly more conversational, more personal in its tone, and words like embrace at the beginning, or softer, or luscious, okay, or soft, emphasise the appeal or the particular quality of the product the writer wants to stress, the advertiser wants to stress. And that exclamation at the end, mistake proof, obviously to stress how useful a product it is. Okay, so you can use some of those persuasive techniques in your argument. Normally at the end of your paragraphs or towards the end of your piece, when you think you've got enough solid reasons there in your foundations, your brickwork, you can then paint it up and make it sound good. That often does make the difference. That's what swings your reader. Okay, so hopefully that's helped you. And the next tutorial, obviously we're looking at section B and the boring the striped pajamas questions, which I'd actually like you to do first for various reasons, which I will explain. Okay, thank you.